Face to face, hand to hand, film to film.
Welcome to the Film to Film podcast. My name is James Shergan, and we are back in time. Not quite as long of a break in between episodes this time around for another podcast. So, Iñaki, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. We're doing a little bit of catch up, I guess, on our podcasts. That's why,
Yeah. So, back-to-back weeks for us after kind of a summer break or a spring break, so to speak. We are going back to Italy, or back to a film set in America, but definitely filmed in Italy for a 1987's slasher giallo, Stagefright Aquarius. All right, so let's get into the film here. So, quick synopsis. A rehearsal for a play based on a real serial killer turns chaotic when the escape felon comes for the curtain call. What do you say?
Well, that's somewhat inaccurate.
that was my thought too when reading it. Because it only becomes based off the serial killer after the play actually becomes involved with it. Iñaki, what did you think of Stagefright?
It's a fun concept. It's interesting because I think there's a lot of movies that have been inspired by. I don't know how popular this film was. I looked on IMDb. Not IMDb, by Wikipedia, and it looked like this film was. It's considered one of the more underrated horror films.
Mm-hmm.
Yet. There's a lot of elements in this film that you can see in more modern films, and I'm very curious whether this film took from other movies that I'm unaware of, or if or if more recent movies took it from this film. For example, the cops talking about their food, like that kind of worthless chit chat. We found it in, if I'm not mistaken, in the latest Halloween remake, not Halloween Kills, but the previous one, you just have cops like randomly talking about like the one guy trying oh, my wife is making me this because she wants me to lose weight. Like I was like, I wonder if the makers watched Stagefright. Another example would be. That one was the one that struck me the most. But I think back to Halloween. I think one of the millions of Halloween remakes. It is set like at not at a play, but I think it's a film set. The killer is killing actors.
Scream 3 too. I think kind of has that same.
Right, exactly. Scream 3 does that as well.
Right. Even Argento's Opera, which came out the same year, actually, 1987, is sort of, it has some surface level similarities to it. Very different films, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more of the films that are set within the actual stage and not at, like this one is all set in the stage. You don't leave that place. I'm just trying to remember which Halloween I'm talking about. It has a rapper in it.
H2O Resurrected, one of those.
I
know exactly which one you're talking about, but I don't.
It's the one after H2O. I'm pretty sure. It was one of the bad ones. Like H2O is.
H2O is the good bad one, and then this is the bad one.
Yeah, like from Halloween 4 and up, they're all pretty bad, and then you get H2O, which is like a little peak, and you're like, oh, this is good, and then the next one's still crap. And,
Yeah. Okay, got it. So how did you like the film though?
It was fun. It's going from like a very good, well acted film to this one. That's the part where I know it's unfair to compare The Exorcist and its acting with the acting in this film, but boy.
Yeah. I mean, Exorcist is like going from like all-star cast, like all time, like some of the best actors ever, to the minor leagues, so to speak. I mean, there is a bit of a drop off going to this film,
and then you add the dubbing to it too. So it's just, I don't know. Like for example, Peter, which I think is David Brandon. Well, it's not a bad. He's not a bad actor normally, but what his voice and the tone of his voice was conveying versus what his face was conveying was so not in sync that it looked like terrible acting. And I'm not sure whose fault it is.
Well, that's what happens when you bust your whole budget on the mask. Clearly, it all went to the owl mask that is used in this film. I mean, I think this film is certainly a more minor film. I think you could say, in the sense that it's not the complete package that you're getting here. But I do have quite a good time with Stagefright, and for me, it's sort of one of those films that's very cheap and cheerful and easy to watch. So yeah, let's get into a little bit of background. I think one other interesting thing about this film is that it's one of the films that comes 1987, so same year as Opera, much later than kind of your giallo boom that had happened, but also post-slasher. And I do feel like this film feels a lot like an American slasher, as well as having some of those giallo elements. And part of that is the simplified nature, part of it is the mask, part of it is kind of like the troupe getting killed off. And some of these tropes certainly have a lot of overlap with giallo too, but part of it is also the lack of mystery. There's no like psychobabble that we get at the end of the film explaining exactly the killer. The killer is very clearly, we know who the killer is from kind of the get-go here. So
this film, I don't know if you call it giallo by any means. We're just saying it because it's Italian, and I know that sounds unfair, but I'll say that right now. And the reason is, I mean, this movie is literally like, this is a Halloween-esque film. This is a slasher, it's so much so that you have a doctor saying, hey, like Michael Myers from Halloween. Well, our killer is that version, but here.
Yeah. Except for some reason he's named Irving Wallace, which is maybe a name that they should have workshopped a little more. I don't know if Irving Wallace is striking fear into. Well,
I'm pretty sure Michael Myers back then was like, also not a name that would strike fear.
That's true. Fair.
It gained its reputation due to, the good movie.
Well, I agree with you. There's no way this film would classify as giallo if it were not Italian made. I mean, they even tried to make this set in America. So it absolutely correct there. I feel like it does get lumped into giallo because it does kind of belong. It is Italian made. It's made by this directorial debut by Michele Soavi, who's sort of a really interesting figure in the Italian horror landscape. For those of you who are not familiar, he basically directed 4 films. This is his first film in the span of 1987 to 94, which are kind of considered to be part of like the last hurrah of Italian horror. Italian genre cinema at this point had really been going downhill for quite some time. So he was only 30 when he made this film, so a young filmmaker, the same age as Argento when he did Bird with the Crystal Plumage, who's also one of Argento's proteges. So the film does have a little bit of that look and the movement of the camera. It's certainly not at the level of like an Argento film, something like Opera, which was the same year. But it is interesting that Soavi and his later films do start to kind of have that Argento look to them. And they even have kind of this Goblin knockoff score to this film that is sort of similar to Goblin and sort of similar to the rock scores that Argento was doing at the time too. But Soavi was the assistant director on Tenebrae, Phenomena, and Opera before he got this opportunity to direct, and he would go on to collaborate with Argento on, I think, a couple films where Argento was the producer for them. So both this year he was an assistant director on Opera and directed this film himself. This film was written by George Eastman, who is also a really interesting figure. He's mostly well known for being an actor, and he has a very unique presence in Italian genre films, and is kind of a favorite for a lot of people, myself included. He is a massive human being. He is about 6'10" and huge, and so he is not in this film at all. I think he does occasionally play the killer, so the guy with the mask, but you would be able to tell who he is if you ever see him, because he is the big, massive man that you'll see in some Italian films. So he's in a couple cannibal films and a bunch of just genre films in general, a couple poliziotesques as well. So that's just a little bit of background on the film. So yeah, let's anything that stuck off to you, just kicking it to you before we kind of get into the meat of the film.
I mean, the humor, I guess. There's some sort of subtle humor in it. Either that or, I laughed at inappropriate things. I'm not sure.
I laughed at the fuck Popeye part.
Yeah.
Some of the Italian takes on American dialogue is, not good, but also kind of funny and sort of endearing in a way.
I mean, that the cop, the younger cop, is the director, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and I laughed when he was comparing himself to James Dean. Or
yeah. Like, interestingly, Soavi, opera, how there's like the two cops and one is the killer, and then one gets killed by the killer. Soavi plays the cop that gets killed by the killer.
I see.
Yeah.
The reason I was pointing that out is just because, like, if I was a director, I should have a scene where I'm like looking at a picture of Brad Pitt and be like, man, people say they look like him.
Yeah. People say I'm the Chilean Brad Pitt, What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And then he brings it to the other actor. The other actor was like, if you look like James Dean, I'm Marlon Brando. And the funny thing with him is that actor is Mickey Knox. We're getting into some deep cut trivia here, who kind of came from that same school of acting as Marlon Brando too. So, but basically was blacklisted and had to do sort of these works of toss away Italian film work here. It is humorous. I feel like this film as a whole doesn't take itself too seriously, which makes for me this film just to be a fairly fun, easy, very digestible watch. You don't have to think too hard about anything. It's certainly not a major film, but quite a fun one.
It's an easy watch.
For sure. Yeah, very digestible. One thing that I think is notable about this film is it is very simple, and I do think that serves it well. One thing I do not love about a lot of giallos is how they tack on explanations and stuff like that at the end. This film just keeps it simple. I like that. I think it suits the film. Another thing about the film, too, is I do think it has a very distinct sort of 3-act structure to it in a way that does set it apart a little bit from slashers or other slashers of the time. The first act is really a lot of establishment. There is one kill during that, which is the kill in the rain, which kind of reminds me a lot of the overwhelming weather and something like Phenomena. And then the second act is really the slasher act, and that's the bloodbath that happens. And then the third act is probably my favorite, actually, which is the one where they go into full Hitchcock suspense mode. That act kind of reminds me a lot of Torso, and I really like how they use the set during that act, in the sense that all of a sudden the set starts to feel really massive because we have just basically the lone survivor who is knocked out at some point and trying to piece together what exactly has happened, but knowing that she's in danger in these kind of massive sets, and all of a sudden she's walking down hallways. It feels a little bit Shining inspired at times. I really like how that part is set up. She has to get a key, which is a very sort of giallo-ish thing to happen, and so I do like the patience and the way that it sets all that stuff out. Any of that stuff sort of stick out to you?
It's interesting you mentioned the act things, because I usually do, when we watch movies for this podcast, I do structure or try to structure my notes in acts, even though I don't talk about it that way. And for me, it's usually in many films it's really hard to, I'm not an expert on this, so I'm not really good at pointing out when one act ends and the other one begins until after I think about it. This was one of the few films where I was like, oh, this is act 3. like, and you're right. Like after the bloodbath, we have that. That's the your classic climax, and then you are back in the calm and in the final solution, right? And it was just like my notes were really easy to structure, which I never had that before. But yes, I agree with you that the third act is probably the most interesting, the most fascinating, because visually is very striking. You add a level of suspense that this film did not have as much before.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it's the more, I would say, it's the most mature part of the film.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of by its nature forced to be the most cinematic on visuals, because literally it's just a cat and mouse game between a killer who doesn't say a word and our main protagonist, woman, who is kind of just a bland, typical slasher female protagonist, final girl, basically.
And you had some good action in there too, though. Which, or good stunts.
Yeah, there are some fun stunts, especially in the bloodbath. I think there's some stuff, but I do love just the whole way they filmed that. I love how the woman, I even forget her character name here, has to go under the floorboards in order to get the key, and sort of. What was that?
Her name is Ali or Alicia. Alicia,
okay.
I think.
Alicia has to go kind of under the floorboards to get the key. Meanwhile, sort of like the Irving Wallace has set up his own play with sort of like all the bodies and stuff like that, which I think is just like some really cool set design. So I think there's some really, really nice shots. I think by far the third act is sort of my favorite of them. I do feel like the film sort of picks up steam as it goes along. My favorite order would probably be third act, second, and then first. First probably being the most generic. Second, at least, moves fast and has a lot of kills. And third, I think, is easily the most impressive of the three.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, and when I was talking about stunt, I actually was talking about the third act. I mean, the second act.
Oh, okay.
Like, the second act, sure, you have lots of kills, but I mean, besides, I mean, there were a couple of really good ones, but I mean, many of them are almost off screen. Well, in the third act, you literally have the guy hanging on that cable as he's chopping it. He's like climbing. I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna get more in details there, but all of that was just really fun to watch. Burning a person alive. All of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, now is as good a time as any to sort of get into that. Oddly enough, I don't feel like this is quite as set piece oriented as a lot of giallos tend to be. So, but yeah, I do like how all of that is structured. I mean, I'm a suspense guy, so personally, that stuff is playing very much into what I like as far as that stuff goes. Is there anything else you wanted to share about sort of the stunts and stuff that stood out to you in that third act?
Well, I mean, I was just thinking. To me, the stunt where the guy is just climbing that cable. I mean, it's a high altitude. The man is literally just climbing himself but like the guy falls, grabs onto it. I mean, I think that the stunt itself looks pretty dangerous. I don't know if they're wires. I'm assuming they are, but I don't know because you have to cut them out. But then when he's climbing up. It doesn't look like there's a lot of sleight of hand. So, and then as he's moving up, she's like, what's it called? Axing that cable.
Cord. Yeah.
Yeah, until he falls. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And the second one is, her like throwing fire onto him when he was in the ground as he tries to grab her leg, and then he's just running away. I mean, those are two moments when we're talking about stunts, are kind of impressive. I mean, they're nowhere close to Hong Kong, but I think they're still like they're pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they're the sort of stunts where people can easily get hurt, for sure. I mean, it's like not an insignificant amount of distance to fall from there too. So certainly a little bit dangerous, for sure. How about the killer design? Where do you stand on the owl mask?
It's fun.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's just a unique look. It's like if you're gonna remember anything from this film, it's definitely the owl mask. What's your move if I just show up on your door in a week and I'm just wearing the owl mask?
I'd be surprised you flew to DC.
Would you? You wouldn't have questions. You wouldn't be like, "What's going on?"
Well, I'm assuming it would be you.
I like how the owl mask films too. How you kind of have the owl eyes, and then within it, you see sort of the human eyes too. I like the close-ups that we get from there.
It looked really uncomfortable, to be honest.
Yeah. If you had a cat, are you naming him Lucifer?
It's a great name. It's a great name. I mean, that's all I can say. As soon as when it's like, Lucifer, where are you? I'm like, oh, that's great. It's so cute.
Yeah. 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 Maybe the cat, one of the better actors in this film for sure. Okay. All right. So let's see. So getting into some of the stuff that I liked. So any scenes that you want to pull out, just feel free to interject or anything like that.
Okay.
One set that I did really like is kind of how they set up, where they're kind of coming back for rehearsals. The director is kind of your classical dick, who is like trying to milk the kill that had happened earlier in the film in order to kind of strum up interest in the play. I think that's probably one of the better performances of the film. Anyways, so basically they're going back to the rehearsal, and they have a guy playing the killer in an owl mask, and what they don't know is that, but you as the audience knows, is that the killer has taken the place of that person. And so when the director's like, killer, obviously intending it to be fake, and then instead the person just stabs them. I like how that's set up. It's kind of done in a way that I think is, reasonably clever for the sort of film and that this is. I thought that was one set that did stick out to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun. It's funny because the director's still kind of a dick until like the girl is actually killed. Because, I mean, the killer's first choking her, and the director thinks that they're acting. So he's like, harder. And then the killer takes out the knife, and at that point, the director's like, why is there a knife there?
That's not in the script.
Yeah, that's not a prop. And then, I don't know. Yeah, you shouldn't be having that. And then once he starts stabbing her, that's when you finally realize, oh, I'm an idiot. And I also like plot-wise how they set it up. Like, why are they all locked? Well, the director's an idiot. Let's start with that. But then the second part is the director tells her, the girl who just got killed, to hide the fucking key.
Yeah. It's kind of your stereotypical setup. You know exactly what's going to happen when that happens. As soon as the person is like told to hit the key, you're like, okay, this person is definitely going to be the next person to die. But it works. I like how it's set up. It's simple.
Yeah, no,
it works.
It's obvious, but it's sufficiently it's sufficiently well done to the point that you're okay with it. Like, because she could have hit the knife, she could have been killed, and then what happened to the knife, and everyone could ignore that. But no, here the movie actually puts it out. Like, we thought about it because someone asked, "Hey, where's the knife?" Only she knows. Fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that, and of course there's Willie. Willie has the other copy. Fucking Willie.
Who basically gets written out until the very end and gets to come back. Yeah. Shoot, I had a thought and I lost my train of thought there for a moment. Let's see. What do I got here? Sorry.
Do you want me to talk while you're thinking, or?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I guess one of the things that this film does try to play a little bit with is that I thought was interesting or fun was the director. So the film sets out the director like from the very beginning as a complete dick. But when he convinces everyone to stay, it sort of sets up a situation that apparently it makes sense, where besides the businessman with the briefcase full of money, all the actors and the director were poor as fuck. They're all actually working for free, and they would get that briefcase full of money after the play was done, or depending on how successful that play was doing. So it gives you a little backstory, or a very short but like decent backstory to understand why maybe he's being a dick. And then there's a moment where, in fact, he seems empathetic, and you're like, oh, maybe this guy is a good guy. So I like this sort of. It's not an arc, but I like because this is a simple movie. No one has an arc in this thing. But I like how the director goes from being a complete douchebag to, in the middle, during Act 2, being empathetic and being like, hey, I'm sorry about, your leg. I should have listened to you. And he seems like very caring. And then at the end of Act 2, when, his options are to push an actress towards the chainsaw-wielding killer, or, maybe throw an axe at the killer that probably would have habilitated the killer, he chooses the former. The killer slashes, like, literally. I mean, I don't even know. I think the killer even swings at her because she literally falls onto the chainsaw, getting hurt, and then the killer walks towards the director and kills him.
I don't know about you, but I think that's like Academy Award winning, like 0 to hero to zero work right there.
Yeah, I mean that's all on the writing, of course. But it was.
It is
interesting.
It is amusing.
Yeah, it was amusing. I was not expecting it, to be honest, and I think that was probably one of the highlights. One of the highlights in the film. The character himself is just. It was. I've never seen basically a character that is irredeemable, almost redeem itself, and then become irredeemable again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like totally irredeemable at the end, where he's like tossing someone out in front. He couldn't even come up with a good reason for the killer not to kill him too. He's like, "I'll just leave you alone, and you leave me alone. Okay, good deal, right? Good deal." It's like the killer's like, "Fuck no." Yeah. So that was pretty good. I was intending to bring that up at some point too, so thank you for doing that. So yeah, this is what happens when you can't read your own handwriting, is you end up staring at it and blanking out for a while. But I was going to ask you, how bad is the play that they were going to put on? I know they don't have Rotten Tomatoes for a play like this, but what's the percentage score that they would have if they were having it? 13%? 12%? So
I have a quote from the beginning of this film, and I think this was the quote that this play was supposed to be remembered by. Victim rapes her own murder. It'll be sensational. That's a quote from the film. That's the director describing it to the businessman, Ferrari. I think this will be a hot trash, and that's the idea. It's during the exploitation era, and having an exploitation play in Broadway. The actors are all basically not getting paid. It's a trash. The production company, like, this is trash from the beginning. Like, you see everyone at this dress rehearsal, which, by the way, it's a dress rehearsal, and no one is ready. The dress rehearsal is what you do before the play actually comes out, and obviously this is in films, they know this shit. So obviously this is like a terrible actors, terrible dress rehearsal, terrible director, and then the costume. Everyone hates the costumes. Everyone is uncomfortable with the costume. The owl guy is bitching about it. There's several characters just going like, I think almost all of them are just like, this I hate this costume. It's so uncomfortable. Main character gets stuck with her zipper. Laurel, I mean, beyond it looking like a like a fucking, I don't know. It's just a really stupid costume. It just looks really ugly. She also hates it. It's one of those plays where I'm just like, yeah, this is hot garbage, and I think they're doing it with if no money, and they hope that it'll be trash. It will be so trashy that it'll gather people to watch it through that sheer impact.
Right. Yeah, and you can tell it's not working too. So it makes sense in the context that they're putting on a really, really shitty play, which bizarrely has the killer in an owl mask, which, makes no sense, but also makes complete sense in the sense that they're making something crappy.
And this owl will be raped by its victim. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. You make me kind of want to see this play, just to see how hot trash it could be.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. That's the whole point.
Yeah. It was a very good year for birds and giallo during this year. You have opera with the ravens that probably costs way more than the whole budget of this film, and then you have a guy walking around in an owl mask killing off people in this film. So, connections.
Now, how many cats do you think were hurt in this in the production of this?
I don't know. How many do you think?
I don't know, but they were pretty rough with that fucking cat.
Oh yeah, you thought so?
I feel like they kept on grabbing it, like tossing it, and it was a real cat the entire time. So I'm curious whether it's one cat, two cats.
More or less than Inferno, where they're just throwing cats on the Daria Nicolodi.
Yeah. I think those were animatronics, though, right? Hopefully.
I'm not counting on it. Dario likes to use real animals.
Yeah, I mean, Italy loves their cannibal Holocaust films in which you have to kill at least 3 animals to...
Yeah, it's like one of the prerequisites. It's like you have to check it off, otherwise it's not officially an Italian cannibal film.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I have no idea as far as the cat stuff goes. I suppose there probably was a little bit of a cat injury or two on the set here. All right, let's see. So I like the set too. Any takes on the set? I think it works well as sort of like a single location film where we get to go backstage, kind of in the rafters up in the air too. I like how there's like mannequins around too. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on kind of just the set design?
No, it's pretty cool. I really like the platforms, like I guess the upper catwalks and things like that add a little of a 3-dimensional. Like you can see they can see the killer when he's up on the catwalk, or you can see the killer when they are up in the catwalk while the killer's down. And in both cases, it's just sort of fun because you have this space that is not that big, but that becomes big because of all the different levels. And even though everything is very visible, it's it adds. It's very dynamic. I would say that's what it is. It's a very dynamic stage. I almost prefer more than other giallo films or horror films where you are in multiple different buildings, but it's just not as fun. Here you get to explore like the cat and mouse, especially between the killer and the final girl at the end. The other thing I liked about the stage, of course, is also on the third act, the use of the corpses to set up that beautiful scene.
Yeah. I mean, Irving Wallace was... he was probably a much better actor than everyone else. He knew how to really put on a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And probably much better at set design than Peter. I also like how in that last shot, if you're taking away any images from the film, it's sort of like that, what you were just describing there, where he kind of takes all the bodies, chops off the head of a mannequin and puts the director's head on top of it. It's just a really cool shot. You see like the feathers blowing. He puts on like some really loud opera music, basically, or operatic music, and basically she has to go under the floorboards. I think that stuff is definitely some pretty masterful. Honestly, I think it's really well executed.
Yeah, you had the cat on him, so he almost looks like a Bond villain.
Yeah. Good old Lucifer. I don't even think Bond villain would call his cat Lucifer. Yeah, for sure. What do you make of the second act, where we kind of have basically the body count act, where we have everyone kind of getting chopped down in a matter of about 5 minutes there?
It starts off kind of cliche, Richmond is, I think, is the first one. Besides the friend who gets killed at the very beginning, then it's just like the fat rich guy, Mr. Ferrari, getting killed as he's trying to bribe the killer.
Well, I think first it's the woman when they don't realize it's the killer in the owl mask, and then it's Ferrari.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
So that kill is really good, but that's sort of like, that's really the turning point. Well, turning point is when they lock everything, but after her, it's Mr. Ferrari, and then everyone else. And at first, it's a little bit cliche, and then it goes back to sort of exciting or interesting when everyone gets weapons. So, you think that the film will go somewhere different because they all realize, oh, where did he got the drill from the tool room? We can get weapons there. And it almost seems like they have a plan. They're all together and stuff. And even though that ends up in almost nothing, it is sort of exciting to see that, because it kept me interested on saying like, oh, who's chasing who? Is the lone killer gonna be chasing them, or are they gonna chase him? And at the beginning, it seems like they're gonna chase him until he chops a woman in two.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it kind of just all goes to shit, too, because not only can they get weapons, but the killer can also get his choice of weapon, which is apparently the killer was just a big fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because he goes for the chainsaw. And yeah, I mean, that's where they're in that ceiling type area in the rafters. That's where it goes to shit, where one of the women gets pulled down and gets sawed in half, basically, and then her boyfriend, I think, just goes crazy and jumps down in there like an idiot and basically gets mowed down. I like that shot too. It's very simply executed, but he's kind of like in the screen, and then we just have the guy with the chainsaw just come and just push him off screen, basically. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that shot maybe in Texas Chainsaw before, but just a classic, just well done. I don't know if the kills are like head and shoulders above slashers, but I think they're generally pretty solidly executed and well done.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way it's one of the tame. I mean, it's kind of tame for a slasher, except for the girl getting cut in half, which the shock value is more about how they think they're pulling her and rescuing her, and then when they fully pull her, it's like, oh, it's just her torso. And, so you get a shock value, and plot wise it works really well. I think, I'm not saying, I mean, I think the kills are done really tastefully, in that they're not as explicit as other films. And they're interesting enough. I think the act where everyone's getting killed, in generally speaking, is pretty much on par with your average slasher. But there are some interesting moments that make it worthwhile.
Right. I would say the main difference, I would agree with you for the most part. The main difference, I think, is the concentration of kills. Just the sense that they all happen extremely fast. It's almost just like a massacre of like 5 people getting killed in just a few minutes. In down to like, oh, well, I guess we're at the final girl stage already. At basically as soon as everyone dies, because with about 40 minutes left in the film. I think you still have 6 or 7 characters alive, but by the time it's only like an hour or half an hour left, you're down to just the one woman.
Well, that's
Alicia.
because they chased the killer.
Mm-hmm.
And in most films, you don't have that. In most films, everyone is hiding, running away. And I think this one, I think the kill count went really fast because they chased the killer, which meant that they were all there, ready to be mowed down. Because all the I mean, if there's one thing this movie that's really follows a slasher to the T, is they're all idiots. And
they should have stuck to acting.
There was one character who apparently used to be worked at a cafe serving drinks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they should have stuck to. No, but what I'm saying is, like, I thought this was gonna get a little bit closer to. I don't know if you've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the one where.
Oh yeah, Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors, yeah, where there's a plan, and they actually execute the plan fairly well. I mean, shit ends up not working because the enemy on that one is a lot more powerful than this dude. I thought it was going to be like that in the sense that they were going to really take full agency, and it was going to be a cat and mouse. It was going to be who it's going to catch who. But instead, the director kills Brett. Let's start with that, because Brett actually was not killed by the killer.
Yeah. Which is a smart twist setup too. Maybe not totally surprising if you've seen enough of these things, but I was like, oh, that's going to be Brett in there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone knew that, but I mean, I didn't know he was going to be alive.
Yeah.
So you got that, but beyond that, I just, they're all together, and that's the part where it was interesting, because in most films, if they're chasing the killer, they're all split up to chase the killer, and obviously then each of them is getting killed one by one slowly, because the killer has to figure each one out. Here they're all together, which in theory, like whenever, I mean, you've seen Scream and Cabin in the Woods. They both talk about that cliche of splitting up is a terrible idea. Well, here they're all together.
Yeah.
But they execute it terribly.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, to use a poker term, they basically went on tilt once like stuff started to not go according to their plan, and like just shit hit the fan. It was like, especially the guy that jumped down there. I mean, talk about unforced error that really messed up the plans, and the director just being generally a fuck up. So what are you gonna do? Okay. All right. Well, anything else to share about sort of the conclusion of the third act, where our lead wakes back up after kind of being knocked out, and basically has to navigate her way out of there, fighting off the killer in the meantime?
Anything to add? I mean, no. I think again the sheer level of suspense makes it very worthwhile. And again, the play on within the location, right? She's under the stage as a killer, or the killer, set up that beautiful stage. She's then on the upper catwalk, all the way up, while the killer is down chasing her. She cuts him off, and he's down, and then there's that fire thing, which we had seen already. I mean, the movie has a lot of. I guess one of the things that the movie does really well is the setups and payoffs. So you had that can with fire, and you saw burning like some money, but you didn't know what the fuck that was for, or how it's going to be used. Oh, it's used to kill the killer. You have this tall, like high up catwalk. You know someone's going to fall, but you don't know how. Well, you get to see it, and it's actually a really fun scene. So it sets up a little elements throughout. You even have the gun, right? It sets up the gun. She tries to shoot him, obviously fails, because a good guy with a gun does not solve the situation, unless you know how to use it. which means.
I mean, even if you know how to use it, it doesn't necessarily solve the situation. But yes,
Exactly. Which, again, another thing that is set up, and then at the end you get to see it being used. Way at the end. I mean, all those little elements. It's just. I think on that level, it's sort of fun to. This movie did a good job at like setting up little things.
Right. For sure. I also like how the owl mask makes the person in it seem really big too, just because it kind of like enlarges it, so it kind of makes the person just superhuman almost. If you did not know that this film was Italian made, would you think it was American, or would you be able to identify it as Italian, do you think?
I think because of the dubbing, and this one, the dubbing, there were moments where like the dubbing was just really bad. I would not think it's American.
Okay.
Would I think it's Italian? I don't know. Another reason why I would not think it's American. The weird ass placement of an American flag.
Yeah.
Whenever you have a non-American film, you gotta have like flags and weird ass places.
Yeah. It's like, why does this random theater place even have that? Yeah, they. That is one way that they like to make it seem like their stuff is set in America when it very clearly is not.
So, I mean, all of those things would make me think, no, this is not an American movie. Would I think this is an Italian film? No, not necessarily. It could be from anywhere from Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Spain had a bunch of films sort of like this too, slasher knockoff, so to speak. Do you see, because Michele Soavi is kind of an Argento protege, do you see very much Argento in any of this?
Perhaps in the rock use, whenever there were action scenes, you had this industrial rock sound coming up.
Yeah. The Goblin, Not Goblin.
I mean, it's industrial rock. I mean, Goblin, it did not create it. You have other bands, and I mean, and also this is the 80s, and I mean, this film is 80s through and through.
For sure.
And even the rock is that. It's not Goblin rock was, I think, more distinct. This is more 80s rock.
Yeah, so 80s, we even get like the random saxophone in it.
I know. Although I love that saxophone.
Yeah.
I was actually digging that saxophone.
I was also like, why is there a saxophone in this too? But
I was digging it.
Yeah, so 80s or early 90s just totally places the film there. I think you're right. I don't know if I noticed that much Argento in this. Argento did not produce this film. I think you probably see a little bit more of that in some of the later Michele Soavi films that he would do a couple of years later. But I do feel like this film, simple as it is clearly done by some fairly talented people, even if it's not exactly groundbreaking. So I think that more or less kind of sums up what I have for the film. Any last words before we move on to Souvenir and who won?
I just wanted to, talk about fucking Willie. The worst fucking, I don't know if he's a guard or the manager of the building, but whatever it is, he's the fucking worst. So, technically, I mean, whenever someone would pinch his fucking cheek and be like, "Oh, Willie, come on, please," Willie would be like, "All right, ha ha ha, I will fucking do whatever you're asking me."
Yeah.
And that was the cause for the killer to get in, for then her to go back in to get in harm's way, and then after being completely reckless on all directions, including not following the cops because someone pinches cheek. A girl pinches cheek, and be like, "Oh, come on, Willie." After all of that, he kills the killer, and goes like, "Yep, right between the eyes, Allie. Right between the eyes. Yep, right between the eyes, Allie." And it's like, come on, Willie. What's wrong with you, Willie? that's my thought. That was my thought.
Well, he named his damn cat Lucifer, so don't tell me you didn't see it coming. I mean, Willie is clearly an interesting person. But in this film, he's mostly a plot device to make sure certain stuff is unlocked or locked, and to eventually kind of play the hero, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah, he almost reminds me of a character from SNL, played by Kenan Thompson.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of opens his eyes real wide, like Kenan does too.
Yeah, that too. But no, there was one sketch about like this guy, like there's a guy who's like, oh, okay, we have an issue with you because you looked at her weird, so we're gonna have to fire you. Like this is boss talking to him, and then they're like, you, this other guy who's like this old black man. I mean, Kenan Thompson playing an old black man, being like, yeah, we're gonna have to let you go too. And he's like, oh, how come? Is it because I've been grabbing this girl's ass every day? And it's like, no. And everyone's like, no, why is he leaving? He's such a cute old man. And he's like fully sexual harassment in all the ways. Well, yeah. I forget the name.
I remember this. I feel like his name might have been Willie in that too. But, you know,
probably.
Maybe we're wrong. Yeah.
But I mean, this is kind of like, this really felt like that too. It's like, oh, if a girl were to, you know, like.
Yeah.
To show some sort of interest, it'd be like, all right, I'm gonna do it.
Well, maybe they should use some, George Lucas technology and just get Kenan Thompson, recast it, and redo that part where he just gets like post-edited into the Will role.
I feel like that would be a downgrade on the level of acting. Oops.
Yeah, I guess Kenan is probably not the greatest actor alive. Okay, so justice for Willie, or no justice for Willie. All right, well, what souvenir are you taking?
Probably the owl mask.
Okay, I feel like that's the only answer. I feel like it has to be the owl mask. It's just a cool mask. You can mess with your friends. You can show up at your doorstep in the owl mask, and I don't know how you'd react. You could freak some people out. Yeah, just a good classic slasher mask.
I mean, I was gonna say Lucifer, perhaps, but that cat was too noisy.
Also, it was like clearly very comfortable with being the killer's cat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like sitting on the lap with all the bodies around. Was it chewing on some intestines at some point? Yep. I don't know. Possibly.
Yeah, I think it was. It was.
Yeah. So Lucifer was very quick to adopt to being Irving Wallace's kitten. Okay, who won the film?
I guess, yeah, probably we're gonna give it to Soavi.
Yeah, kind of by default, right? I mean, none of the acting performances are great. I feel like the lead was fine. I think she wasn't too bad, but they're all sort of playing very sort of cardboard cutout, generic bland characters, which if you've watched enough of these slashers, is pretty par for the course as far as these films go. Not a lot of character development beyond the zero to hero, back to zero from our director Peter. So yeah, I gotta give it to Soavi too. How about rating?
7.
Okay, yeah, coming in pretty close to me then. I'm at 7.5. Definitely a film that I have a good time with. Is it a great film? No. But is it a fun watch? Absolutely. For me at least. It's just the soundtrack. Where do you stand on the soundtrack? Did you like the soundtrack?
I really like actually the use of music. I guess I forgot to touch on that. I like the use of the operettas. It would add a level of gravity both in world and also for us as audience. That made it fun because you knew that everyone was like the killer was kind of fucking with everyone using that music.
Right. Was the operettas the stuff at the end?
The music. I mean, the music that he would play.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you know, like he would put music. I mean, I guess the one thing that perhaps made this movie fun is that the killer was fun. The killer was having fun at this process. It wasn't there's a lot of slashers where the killer is almost just a killing machine. I mean, whether it's Halloween, Friday the 13th, etc. The killer's just killing. In some cases, it's even out of pain, like on that summer camp movie. I forget now the name. Anyways, here the killer is really enjoying what he's doing. He's really enjoying it. He's putting music. He's setting up a stage. He's playing with the cat. In fact, I mean, this is the first killer I don't see killing the animal. And in that sense, there's a level of agency on the killer that made it more fun and playful.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, plus it's hard to take it that seriously with the owl mask, so it's not as dour as some slashers can get too. But yeah, there's a certain theatricality to the killer that definitely works. Yeah, and I think we've covered that, like the way he sort of sets up the bodies and stuff like that too. So good call there. So yeah, I think that wraps up this film to film episode. We will be back in a few weeks with another one. So stay tuned for that. You can send us an email at zafilmtofilm@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us, zafilmtofilm as well, on Twitter. And we will be uploading this to YouTube as well. So thank you all for tuning in. Hit subscribe if you are listening to our podcast, and give us a 5-star rating if you liked what you hear. So thank you all, and we will see you all next time.
See you next time. Ciao.
Ciao.